Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time here on twitch.tv/DNI stream. Welcome to Documentation Not Included, episode 5.1, Developer Communities and Events. My name is Josie, and my normal hosts of Mostest with the most awesomeness is Chris and Patrick are here.
Hello.
Yay!
And our guest today is someone we became aware of a few weeks ago, and we mentioned him last week, very briefly, when we stumbled across his absolutely wonderful website that gave us lots of nostalgia. It's Paul Verbeek-Mast. Why not introduce yourself? Tell people who you do, who you are, what you do.
I'm a front-end developer at a startup called Confrere. I work from home from the Netherlands, and yeah, that was it. Basically, I run a lot of meetups and conferences, and attending them and speaking at and doing everything at conferences that you can do.
Right. So you do. Is it mostly speaking, or is it because today's subject, which we've already mentioned, is communities and events? Are you mostly focused around attending the events on behalf of your company then?
I'm mostly focused on organizing events on behalf of myself.
Okay.
And then also speaking at behalf of my conference.
Right. Okay. Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Ooh. Before we go too further, we will have an icebreaker question as always. But before we do this, for those of you who are not watching live and listening to us in the future, you are missing out on the most epic mustache ever to grace our show. So you might want to go check that out. But icebreaker question time. So here is the question. Has nothing to do with development, has everything to do with you guys. And if you are listening in the future, let us know your thoughts, hashtag DNI stream, or, let us know in chat for those of you who are watching. But if you were to put on a show inside of the circus, what would you want to do or be known for or be responsible for? And it's all about the circus. So Patrick, you're a bit of an animal.
See, I was thinking like some sort of animal act, like with lions or something. Be a little bit traditional. That could be fun, working with animals. Though I would probably bite the buggers to death, so that probably wouldn't be working. I don't know. Actually, like being on like those like gymnastics which are like flying through on the top,
Trapeze?
like that's trapeze gymnastics. That sounds cool. That'll be fun to do.
Gymnastis.
I don't know what's the
Gymnasist. I don't know the word.
What about yourself, Paul?
I'm afraid of heights, so I don't think the gymnast would be something I would do. But what would be also not good when you're afraid of heights, what I would want to do is like being shot away from one of those big cannons.
I wouldn't be afraid
Sounds
of
like
the
a lot of
heights in that instance. I'd be afraid of the death.
Well,
The falling.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Well, immediately my mind went to one of two things. One was either I'm not afraid of heights. I don't like heights, but I'm not afraid of them. Would either be the diving into a tiny little pool thing, just because it's what you see on cartoons, basically. But more probably lion taming, because I'd enjoy the challenge of that more than anything. And the danger.
And you, Josie?
Me? Absolutely anything with Cirque du Soleil. Whether it's the dancing, swimming in the water, climbing up walls, doing things in a flying Viking ship, like anything at all, as long as it was with the Cirque du Soleil. However, here's a little insight into my past. I've actually gone to clown college.
Ooh, I feel like you've mentioned that before, or I've heard that before.
I have
somewhere.
mentioned it before on another podcast, yes. But I've actually gone to clown college, so I would be absolutely perfectly fine doing balloon animals, juggling, balancing, things like that. But it would have to be in the Cirque du Soleil. Like the stuff they do is so grand and so epic.
You see, I'm afraid of clowns. I have whatever that phobia is of clowns.
To be fair, if you think about it, clown college into security makes a lot of sense, because most of our security nowadays is basically clown business.
so do you also have your clown face registered somewhere?
No.
Do you get that? Do you get your own personal clown face at college, or does it? Is it
No.
when you get further on?
No, it's just simply clown. They teach you the basic fundamentals, like, you know. But yes, gosh, I did that when I was like 17, I think.
How many Josies
16,
can you fit in a mini?
17. At this current moment in time, you'd be lucky to get one.
Oh.
But anyway,
Yeah. Let us move on to our topic, which is today developer communities and events. So here is a question that's been itching on my mind, Paul. Let's say I want to make an event, like within a few months. What are the things that people usually don't expect until they actually start doing events, and then it's like a big issue that they just never thought about?
It's a lot of work. Just a whole lot of work. It kind of depends on the type of event that you want to do, but I think that some people think, oh, I have like 4 months and then I want to do the event, but they want to do a conference. No, that's not nearly enough time to even get to your audience, for example. So finding the right audience, that is a pretty big thing that some people underestimate, I guess. But also just the amount of work that you have to put into the whole thing.
So what are the scale of the events that you've done then, or that you get involved in? Are they huge global conferences, or are they just like the smaller, kind of more niche events?
A little bit of both. So I have my own meetup group in the Netherlands, which I started with my wife about 5 years ago. And so that ranged from events that had like only 10 people that showed up to about 100.
Okay.
But I also organized or helped organize conferences. And one of them was a big conference in Amsterdam, which had about 800 people.
Nice. And
a huge budget because it was sponsored by one of the bigger web companies.
Okay.
That is a thing. For you guys, because we'll get into it, but like Chris, I know you go to a networking event, which is sort of its own little thing. But for you and Patrick, have you guys gone to actual events or conventions or anything, either as a speaker or?
I've been to quite a few events as an attendee. So I've been to lots of gaming events, mostly local, but they're huge. You know, there's still, there's one called Play Expo that I've been to, which I think is all across the country, if not a bit further afield. But it's run at a big hotel up there on the Prom where I live, and there must be a couple of, I don't know, probably a couple of hundred, not 100,000. I don't know how many people, because it's rammed and it's a huge area, and there's people playing games and indie developers selling the games, and it's a kind of a retro gaming convention, and I go to it every time it's on because it's such a great experience, you know. And I also, when I was doing my game development, I was in the process of getting stands at those places, but I didn't get to that point. So that's how I've attended events. I have spoken at a few smaller events. I've been to lots of gaming networking events, but again, they're all quite small, 20, 30 people, and done talks, but that's about the limit of my experience.
What kind of things did you speak about?
Well, my game, when I was developing my game, and specifically, I've been to one or two smaller non-gaming technical events where I've spoken about a specific technology, or something like I don't know, how to put processes in place in particular. You know, it's development specific, so software development specific stuff. And I'm actually in the process of making some inroads in one of the local cities to me, that I'm going to hopefully start getting involved in that a bit more, because I quite enjoy it. I quite enjoy getting up and talking to people and talking about something specific and being told that I'm wrong as well, you know. I enjoy that side of things.
You are so wrong, Chris. Like, that's it. I don't want to hear any more from you. What about you, Patrick?
Yeah, as for me, I wasn't...
Oh, we lost Patrick just as he started speaking.
Wait, what?
No,
we lost you just as you said it, just as you started speaking.
He's still here.
Oh, okay.
What is even
Well,
happening?
luckily it's my computer that's doing the recording, so everybody else saw that Patrick disappeared. So say what you just said again then, Patrick.
All right, so I haven't went to as many events as I'd like to. In terms of just like attending as a guest, I went mostly to fantasy convents or like gaming events, local Polish ones. And in terms of, and I also was speaking at a conference as a, I was speaking as a, about game development to business graduates, and I was speaking, also was leading workshops about crash course of game development art asset pipeline to art graduates. So that was interesting.
Nice.
See, I'm sitting here and I'm so sad that Gordon couldn't be in chat right now, because Gordon, who was a previous guest on our show, he's with Lineup Ninja. They're a little startup that helps set up events, from everything from the call to, you know, papers and things like that for the people who talk, to scheduling the venues. Like, they've got that whole thing sorted. I'd love to have him in here to actually have some particular questions. For me, I've talked, I've attended big things, I've attended small things, and I will tell you, as someone who has done both the talking side and the attendee side, the thing that has always driven me the most insane is the scheduling. I like small get-togethers in the development community where everyone's in the same room and we all get to hear the same things. Yay! When you start adding rooms and talks, we start ending up in a situation where, like for me, there might be a talk going on about something very security specific, and I'm like, yeah, I really want to see that. And then there's another talk about something that is very development centric in another way, and I'm like, I want to do that, but they're both on at the same time. I'm like, why?
That's like going to a music festival, though, isn't it? It's exactly, there's three bands on all at the same time that I want to see, and I came to see all three of these bands and none of the others I care about, but they're all cross over each other.
Yes,
I just thought as well, actually, what I'm currently doing, the work I'm currently doing, I'm putting together a proof of concept for some very large technical events, or rather the more business sales events. So I'm creating the smoke and mirrors that goes on when they're showing, you know, the implementation or the cross-platform deployment, and I'm having to dig real deep into the details. So it's interesting from somebody who's a developer, who's someone who's very technical, very deep thinking in terms of how I implement things, and I want to do things right. I want to put the right patterns in place and all of the other stuff. I have to avoid all of that, and everything's just little scripts here and there that just about cobble together. I've got an MQTT server here. I've got a VM here that does something different. I've got, you know, all these little things that are just kind of just about getting the job done, you know.
That breaks my heart.
But it's really interesting at the same time, because it's totally different from what I'd normally do, and it's interesting to get to that point.
You know, it depends on how you look at it. Sorry, Patrick. Go ahead, dear.
Yeah, I gotta say, I find the public tech presentations extremely interesting, because as you see it, if everything hopefully goes correctly, everything, like, you see this beautiful Polish product that just works amazingly. But what you don't know is that behind all those smoke and mirrors is like basically 100 mockups, hard-coded variables, and everything is falling to pieces. What was the anecdote about the presentation of iPhone when Steve Jobs revealed iPhone? They had some garbage collection memory issues, I believe, where basically they couldn't switch the screens. So whenever he would like to show different feature, he had to like do a little bit sleight of hand and switch phones to show up like a different one.
Whatever it is you have to do.
I've still got the Windows 98 reveal blue screen video on my computer.
You gotta love that. So going back to you, Paul, because we can get lost in conversations and things you can't tell.
Feel free to jump in, Paul, at any point.
Yes, feel free to just be like, shush, it's my turn. So what got you involved in communities in general? I mean, this is the topic you picked. You are really passionate about this.
Yes.
So why communities? Why events? Why developer stuff? Why anything?
Why people?
Why people, yes. People are nice. Most of them, at least.
It's one of the few people who's come on the show and said that.
Well, for me, I started out as being a .NET developer, and I wasn't really enjoying that part of development very much. And then someone said, you should go to this conference for front-end developers. Maybe you like it. And then I went to the conference and I noticed like how the community was, how the people were, and how much you'll learn from each other, and how people on stage teach you something valuable in a fun way. And because all the schools I went to, I failed, I saw how valuable this was for me. And also to find like-minded people. And after a while being front-end developer, I noticed that I wanted to have something more small-scale, a small-scale event in the Netherlands. And we had some, but they weren't exactly how I wanted it to be, like just open for everybody and inclusive, and mostly also in English, so that everybody in the Netherlands could join, because I think more people speak English here than Dutch, if you take Amsterdam, for example.
Yeah.
So so you're saying that the events you were attending, they weren't inclusive, and that's what you wanted. You wanted.
Yeah. So they were all Dutch language,
right.
or they were. They didn't have a code of conduct, or it really felt like it was very white male centered, I think.
As someone who's come up in the industry, I know exactly what he's talking about.
We were very keen on a code of conduct for our podcast. It's one of the things that Josie and I spoke about at the very, very beginning. The code of conduct and something else as well. Community guidelines we've got in place. We don't have a huge community. We are building it slowly. Our Discord is getting larger, and it's lovely. It really is nice to, on a daily basis, to speak to somebody different and get their opinions and have a little bit of banter with them. And we're all posting little daft things in our Discord, and also talking about serious things as well. And that's, to me, that's where the community aspect comes from. It's people who are like-minded, and people who care about what they do to an extent where they've got a fairly strong opinion about it as well. And I found that when I was in the game dev side of things, the game dev community specifically, especially the indie game dev community, it just so welcoming. It really was, and I loved that. Unfortunately, I'm not even a slight part of that anymore, and I wish I was, but I don't develop a game now, so...
It's not too hard to get involved. Hashtag Indie Dev Hour on Twitter.
Of course.
Of course, I still have quite a few contacts from, because I love indie devs. And stuff like that. And hello, Anvina. Thank you so much for joining. Another person from the Netherlands, one of our community members. But yes, it's interesting to me, because when I first started going to conventions and things like that, it was... The best way to put it was, it felt like a bloody mess. Like unorganized, not very laid out very well, or at least that's what it felt like. And it might have been because at the time, doing everything online wasn't like expected. I mean, I've been in this industry for a long time. I'm an old lady. So yeah, but I have noticed over the years that the need for some kind of code of conduct is needed, or some kind of rules of engagement almost, because if you have for example, some of the things that I've participated in, Microsoft focused, Linux focused, trying to go to one or the other. Don't die on us, Paul. I mentioned two things, and all of a sudden
you got Linux and cancer is showing.
Sorry.
But yes, it's you start getting into even in today's day and age, where we'll joke and we'll say, yeah, so what's your programming language? I do Angular. Well, I focus in Node. Well, I do insert JavaScript flavor of the month here. Or someone goes, well, that's not really coding, because you're not doing things at assembly. It goes back to the episode of when my husband came on, Us v Them. I've seen that. So having some kind of guidelines in place for how you should interact with people, to me, I think it's best if everyone kind of just, and bless you, husband of mine. Don't know if his sneeze came across,
yes,
but I think it would be cool if everyone sort of followed the, you know, things like DEF CON sort of code of conducts and stuff. Like,
I think
don't mess with your friends' PCs. Don't log in unless you really want people to mess. Like,
you know, guys, I gotta take something out of my chest. I got a confession to make. So,
it's a Patrick confession. Watch it.
Is this something that we need to have bleeped out so we all don't end up in trouble?
Possibly, but it's
I'll play
not
the confession music underneath it when during the edit.
Okay, so essentially, there is one conference that I haven't mentioned, which was one way or the other, I ended up on banking and finance conference as at least not. Yes, and the best part of it was I actually was official Israeli bank representative. Somehow. So, like, it's a very long story how I got to that point. But, like, when you say about, like, inclusive events, very Wilmer-centric, and, like, you say that about game dev and development, I get that you guys have a point, but you haven't seen how bad it can go.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
well,
wow.
no, I mean, things have changed.
Let me tell you
Things have
this.
changed.
You enter a venue. I mean, that conference was a year ago. So, you enter a venue, you being greeted by basically topless, really nice-looking women. They were technically wearing bikini, but technicality is a very strong word there. Basically, everyone was on coke, and there was so much cocaine in toilets that you could just basically swap your finger and get high. And it was pretty funny because, like, you see all those people in, like, business suits, and they just walk and they just constantly do that. So, game development. Honestly, not that bad. And, you know, like, and general development.
Let's be clear, that probably wasn't development. That was probably a business environment or a sales environment.
The one that I was, it was 100% finance, banking, high, you know.
That's wonderful. Like, it's... I think, personally, over the years that I have seen conventions, they have changed. There was the good old days where when you wanted to go check out cars, you had your car babes. I'm sort of an equal opportunityist kind of person. If there are car babes, I want to see car guys.
Look, I'm the same.
I want to see the men draped over cars. If you're going to put women up, like, if you're going to do that, just be equal opportunity. Robots even. Let's get some robots stretched out.
If I add a naked model mod to Skyrim, I make sure I also add the naked males as well as the naked females. You know, I'm just
exactly.
Honestly,
of Skyrim.
Yeah,
I would do it for free. I could, like, pose in speedos in this, like, Borat style swimming suit by the cars, leaning over them, slobbering. I can do it for free.
Can you not, though, Patrick? Can you not?
Make them gorgeous, Patrick. Or visually pleasing on some level.
Let's bring it back a little bit. We're getting a little bit excited here. One thing that's very interesting, with almost everybody's mentioned here, is the organisation of events. Now, I've found it a big turn-off, not necessarily as a speaker, but as somebody who's come into an event as a attendee, and it's not even been organised chaos. It's just been, nobody seems to have control. Nobody seems to know. There doesn't seem to be one person who's the leader, even in a group of like 3 or 4 people or 5 people that are running a particular event, who have the direction, a schedule, anything like that, you know? And I'm talking about small events here. I'm talking about things that, a meetup that somebody thinks they can just throw together. And this is where Paul's original comment of, right, it takes a while to organise an event properly. It's not. Even a small event takes a bit of effort. This is why a lot of small events kind of peter off, because the people who are organising them don't have the time to continue them.
Or they don't understand
the work. I want to give a little example about what happened recently, for which was, like, clearly some organizational problem. I think it was last week I went to a conference, and they had a nice code of conduct and all diversity tickets and everything, and they had gender-neutral bathrooms.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, that's very nice. So during one of the breaks, I went to the gender-neutral bathrooms, and I was said, no, this is for women only. I'm like, And then I said, well, the sign there above you says gender-neutral. They were like, no, this one is just for women. You have to go to the other bathroom. I'm like,
Okay.
It's the other kind of gender neutral.
That's very weird. So I went to one of the people that I thought were in charge, and they said, "Oh yeah, I don't really know what to do about that."
Okay.
So, and they had like a T-shirts on with like the organization, the conference name and staff underneath it. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to do now. So I posted it on Twitter, which is sometimes not always the best thing to do, but at least I know that it got out. And then I realized that I wasn't talking to the organizers of the conference. I was talking to the staff of the venue, who were not really instructed what to do when someone had a complaint. And this was, or what to do with the gender neutral bathrooms, apparently.
Yeah.
So this was basically like you have a lot of people in in your organization, a lot of people that needs to know what should happen. You have a sort of a clear line of
Escalation.
escalation, and they weren't really aware of what to do, or at least the people that I spoke to weren't really aware of what to do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that even at small conferences you have to you can set up a code of conduct, but what should your crew, how small it is, do when it's being broken or something like that?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the harder things at these conferences and these small meetups, like just taking care of your staff and know what they should do. And
when you said wearing T-shirts and things like that, with staff written on them, that sparked a memory. I used to be an administrator for a LAN party many years ago when I was quite young. I wasn't a head administrator or anything. I was just kind of a volunteer, and that kind of taught me quite a lot about events. Because if somebody came to me because I had a T-shirt on that said staff, and they needed an answer, and if I could provide the answer, I would. If I couldn't, I'd go and speak to the relevant people, and they might be busy doing something, and then I'd go and speak to somebody else, and I'd try and find the answer and go directly back to the person, and and give them the answer they needed. A lot of the time, it was just, how do I connect the internet? How do I get onto the switch? Well,
You don't at certain conventions, because it's just like connecting on like a 24K. It can get really bad. We've had a question come in from chat from Uwe90. I'm probably totally destroying that name.
He was here last week, and I thought it was we or
she. And she says, read it however you want.
Okay, I'm just going to call her Awesome90, because that's just an easy way to remember it. But she asks, not in relation to what Patrick was talking about, the whole cocaine thing. You mentioned how inclusive the events are. How many people exactly have you estimated were at the biggest events you have ever been to? And I can give you right off the bat one event that I have been to that was close to 500,000 people.
Music events, massive. I mean, I've been to one in
I'm
Europe.
not even counting Woodstock
Yeah.
94 that I attended, might I add.
Wait,
that
what?
was interesting.
Wait, what? You were on the original fucking
Woodstock 94, not 69, darling. I'm not that old.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, I had no idea. Josie, you look phenomenal for like being 90. Jesus. How do you do that?
So I mean, the biggest
being
event.
Britishly rude to him, for those of you who are not able to watch us live, giving him the 2 fingers of salute.
The biggest event that I've ever been to was a music event, and that has been 800,000 people across a week. And that's Ziggett Festival in Hungary. But in terms of tech events or geeky events, it's been the games things, and I couldn't tell you how many people. It's just been absolutely rammed, and it's been tens of thousands probably. I can't think. But I didn't talk at any of those. I've never talked at a big event like that myself.
I think it's interesting. One of the hardest things, and I speak as the person who tries to find the amazing individuals who come on to our show. The hardest thing is finding the people to talk. Because so many people in our industry, regardless of whether they've been involved for 20, 30, 40 years, will sit there and go, I don't know enough to talk about a subject.
Yep.
And I'm just like, it doesn't work that way. Pardon me. But at the same time, depending upon the type of event you're putting on, like if you're doing something small, like a meetup group, I know so many different meetups that are local, at least where I live here in Leeds. And they're small, they're tiny, and the thing that makes them successful is they're consistent. Always the same particular Tuesday or Thursday of a month, always at the same time, always at the same location, always with the same type of topic. Mm-hmm. But when you start going up into the, multiple rooms, multiple days, sometimes even multiple topics within one particular subgenre, it starts to get very complicated and complex. And then when you get into the game, if you think about what happens in the game industry, like, for example, let's take Gamescom and Cologne, Germany. This is a very consistent, common yearly thing. As someone who has been there as attendee or press, I can tell you there's two sides to that entire convention. There is the public side where everyone who has their tickets goes in and can see the latest, greatest games, be sort of shown everything that goes with it. But then there's an entire section that is completely shut off to them that is only there for the press. And that has things that aren't on the show floor. Mm-hmm. I remember, this will make you smile, Patrick, running across a company out of China that were advertising their Chinese military game and things and stuff. And that was a very weird set of conversations from the press side of stuff. But if you stop and you think, you have not just the public, you also have the press, you have the people who are showing up to do displays, you have the people who are going to be in the displays themselves, you have the people who are going to have to deal with the food, the catering, the cleaning. Like, so many things I think are not thought about when it comes to. And even if you did like a meetup, let's say that we decided to do a D&I stream meetup and we were going to have our own little convention. It would be one whole day long. We'd have lunch taken care of and everything. We still have to worry about food, cleanup, the venue itself. Are we picking the right location? Are we picking the right time? Are we charging? Are we not charging?
And the communication with all of the attendees, because everybody will want to know a little bit of information. Websites.
Yeah, and then maybe a website. And in today's day and age, do you have the phone app? Is your phone app set up so people can just quickly look up what they need to get to and have the directions written there for them? Is that like, there's so many things that have to be taken into account. It's insane.
Well, and then you have the branding, so you have to print out all your stuff and design all the stuff and
scheduling,
training.
Yes.
Making certain everyone understands what's expected of them. Then you need to find the people to advertise to. You need to find the people to speak. And you have to have a backup plan in case someone gets sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have to make sure that all your speakers are, at least for some conferences, make sure that your speakers are in a hotel, that they have travel and everything, and keep them happy.
Yeah.
And the budget. Budget to do all that.
Have you ever dealt with somebody, Paul, who has done speaking at one of your events who came with a rider on their contract where they're like, we want M&Ms in our pre-speaking room and they have to be all green M&Ms, nothing but green M&Ms?
Yes.
Seriously?
Nothing exactly like that, but one of the conferences I organized, we also had like music at the end of the venue, and one of the bands that played, they had a rider which just said which type of water they wanted, and how big the bottle should be, and that there should always be a full bottle on stage, but not more than one. So all these.
That's
not more than one.
Yes, so they wanted a bottle in a specific spot. If the bottle was empty, a new bottle should be there immediately.
See, I've heard of, like, for example, as the awesome 90 has pointed out in chat, she said, I seriously thought mostly Beyonce did that and that was an urban legend. It's not.
Nope.
Writers are actually a very common thing. There are some incredibly famous rock and roll bands that had writers to make certain that you actually read their contract.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that they were, only wanting to have green M&Ms and only green M&Ms. It was just, did you read what our safety provisions were? Because that's part of the writer as well. So, for example, you might have someone who speaks who uses a wheelchair to move around in. And part of their writer might be, I need a room that is wheelchair accessible. I need to have certain things present in the room at a certain level to make certain I'm able to reach them. And I need green M&Ms and only green M&Ms. And if they show up to wherever it is that they're waiting and they don't see the green M&Ms, they can stop and go, I don't think they've covered all of the safety concerns I might have. So there are some who add riders just to be dicks, mind you. And then there are some who do it as part of a way to ensure that whatever accessibility needs or safety needs they have as part of what they do, whether it's their speaking or they have to bring a technology with them, like they need that technology locked up because it's a prototype, like all of those things also are usually included in riders as well.
Yeah, and when it comes to events, security becomes, I think in recent years, security became much more concerned, physical security. I'm talking just like, the security personnel, simply because some people decided that it's a good idea to take our internet flame wars and make them reality. So maybe it's not as common in Europe, but in States there were gaming events or some cultural events, gaming adjacent, which had bomb threats called on them. They were swatted.
There was a guy who was who was shot.
Yeah.
And all he was just a gaming figure. I can't remember whether it was Smash Brothers or Fortnite or something, but there was somebody who was shot. There were guns pulled at a gaming expo thing. It's just silly.
Bizarre.
But again, these are things that have to be considered when you're actually looking at doing an event. So I have a question for you, Paul.
Sure.
Oh, no, go ahead, Chris, if you've got something.
I wasn't going to ask a question. Basically, I was going to try and redirect us to communities, because we talked a lot about events and about how events are formed and what kind of things happen at events and how difficult they are to create. But we haven't talked about why events are necessary, really. And that's, to me, it's because of the community and because of the people that are involved. And there's so many different sizes of community as well. So many different types of community you've got. I mean, I don't know, Paul. Do you want to? It's a reason that you got into events is because of the community, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's like communities and sub communities, of course. So there's for me the overall front end developer community was very attractive, but like the front end community within the Netherlands and well, for me it was very, very good to see like-minded people within my close area and that I could just talk to when I go to these events. So events, not just the talks, the topics that were spoken there were important, but also the whole social aspects to all of it and the feeling of being part of something. I think that is that you're not alone in the whole thing.
I mean, development can be a lonely place. Specifically, I mean, I think development more than most of the other disciplines within the IT world, at least. Anyway, I mean, network admin, maybe, that kind of thing.
Yeah, come on, like you cannot beat out system admin. Like most of the time, those people are in basements and no one even know they exist. But then you cannot beat that.
Then you've got all the other jobs: the BAs, the PMs, the QAs, the DevOps, even DevOps, I suppose. Yeah, they're all quite people focused.
Yeah,
all of those, and then you've got developers and sysadmins, and not much else that I can think that is can be a lonely thing, because unless we're talking about doing paired programming, or we're doing working in tight-knit teams on a particular feature or in an agile environment, you can be siloed and you can be left to your own devices. Yeah, or not necessarily.
I believe you have my stapler.
Yeah.
I also know a lot of people that they just want to be in that silo because otherwise they cannot develop productively.
That's true.
It is.
That is one of the reasons why I like doing what I do. I like being able to go, it's great and all that you want to talk to me, but I actually want to get the project done now. So shush, my email is closed. If there is an alert, I'll get a notification. Other than that, shut up and leave me alone.
But to me, this is exactly why communities and events. I'm not saying that every developer is the same. Of course they're not. But that's why communities and events, communities specifically, are important. Whether it's a community on Twitter or it's a community that you go to a meetup every Thursday or something, it's because you are going to speak to people And this is why I do the networking, or rather did the networking. I've actually quit the networking group that I was part of as of this week for various reasons, but it's essentially not a development networking group, it's a business networking group. So it's very different. I'm in a group of people who aren't like-minded, who have got very different focuses, and they don't really understand what I do or really care that much, to be fair. You know, that it's not their world. I am absolutely passionate about what I do, and most of the people that do business networking, I'm not saying they're not passionate, some of them are absolutely, definitely, they're doing it as it's a job, you know, a lot of the time, and sometimes they're sent by their employer as well, and they're sent by somebody. Whereas the meetups and the events that we're talking about are elective events, things that we want to go to, and we want to either consume information, or we want to pick someone's brains, or even just spend some time around somebody who has the same love or a similar love to what we do, you know. And that's for me is why I go to these events.
I'm right there with you. I mean, when I first started going to any kind of event or community event or anything involving anything, it was because I was desperate to learn and connect. I'm a people person. I mean, as much as we joke that people suck, the reality is I love people, and I like meeting new people. I like learning from them. I like seeing what I can through their eyes. You know, I like to see what makes them excited and makes them passionate. But for me, when I first started, it was, I have a topic that I'm interested in. There are people who have knowledge. It's free. They do pizza. It's supplied. I'll go. Let's see what happens. And very slowly, I've noticed there's active events and community events, and then there's passive events and community events. One of the ones that I stopped going to, but that I went to for a while, was for writers. People who write novels or sci-fi or nonfiction or short stories or comics, but it was writing, and it took place, again, it's a small thing, at the same place every month, the second Tuesday of every month, at the same place at the same time, and people would show up. Not a word was said to anybody, but you just sat down, your laptop or your tablet got open, coffee was delivered to you, and you typed, but you were around people doing what you did. Mm-hmm. It was only after that event, when you went to the local pub, that talking existed. So there was almost like a purposeful, driven, passive quality to the event. No one wanted you to say hello because they were right in the middle of thought. And when new people joined and you were already there, you're like, please don't say hi. Please don't say hi. I need to remember what my character is saying. Shut up. Like, there's a thing, but it was explained in advance. So you didn't sit there going, nobody likes me. It's like, no, everybody is writing. People were at their pads and pens. They'd stop, tap, they go back to writing. Like, it was like being in a creative maelstrom. It was really fascinating and wonderful, and I got a lot of writing done. But yeah.
So how do you find these events?
Oh, which ones?
Well,
that right there is a key thing. Some events I've discovered because someone said, hey, have you heard about this? It's just someone I know. And I'd be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, well, you should totally come. I'm like, okay, cool. Others I've actively sought out. And others I'm just like, I got an email about something. What? What's this?
For me, I have had to actively find every event that I've went to, and you know, I'm now subscribed to a few lists. I don't do that many events, but I wish I could do more. Unfortunately, where I live is 20 or 30 miles away from in fact 50 miles away from the closest event hub. And it's quite
Birmingham?
a distance. Well, Manchester specifically.
Manchester, Birmingham. Those are some big
Leeds
ones here.
is another great one, but basically the main cities. You know, Preston has got a little bit going on, but it's most of the things that I'm seeing are all marketing events and SEO events. And yes, they're interesting, and yes, I can go and speak to some techies, but they're not as. They're more business focused, more looking at how to improve your business. Whereas I want to go and I want to engage with other techies, even if I'm at an official event run by a recruitment company or something where they're trying to get business. It's a business event, but it's run by it's the speakers are techies and the attendees are all techies. And then when there's a Q&A, I'm usually the first person. I'm the idiot at the back that everybody looks at and goes, "I wanted to go home after this," but I'm asking all the questions and trying to engage and get some back and forth going and in that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's one thing that struck me when you guys were talking about, like, you know, local events, discovering events, marketing your event, getting people and stuff like that. And the one thing that I like, Facebook gets a lot of hate on this podcast, not without a cause. Like, there are many causes to hate.
She's doing
Facebook.
that face again.
She is, but I'm gonna ignore it. One thing that Facebook really did well was the whole idea of local events and discoverability of events, because there were quite a bit of little small things that happened in Cyprus that I had no idea about, if not the fact that there are, you know, groups and events and it all gets sort of suggested, and that algorithm kind of works a bit, maybe sort of, like, it's not horrible piece of shit, for example. So, you know, having a one place where you can go and you can see, you can either, like, you know, I want all the game dev events for entire Barcelona, or I want all the game dev events and also some art events within a 50-mile radius of me, or something like that. I think it's a great tool. I think it's a great thing, and this is something sorely needed. This sort of, as much as I hate centralization, I think centralization in that regard would really help. Otherwise, how are you gonna get your word out?
This reminds me of that XKDC standardization thing, where the comic where basically, there's a we need a standard that everybody's going to, like, we need an app that everybody's going to use to create events on, and then meetup.com gets created, and then eventbrite.com gets evaded, and then because Facebook's not good enough, or Facebook's not, you know, appropriate, or it's not, the discoverability is not good enough, and then they've all got their own problems. There's never going to be one place for all of this.
I wouldn't want there to be one place, to be perfectly honest, because
remember that we strive for convenience, though, don't we, these days?
We do strive for convenience, but here is the thing. When you start getting a monopoly, monopolies can be very easily
manipulated. Yes.
Yeah,
look at Google.
You know,
look at Google and its search results.
To me, I like the idea of there being multiple different things. I mean, at this current moment in time, how I find out about events are the following. I get a little thing from Meetup that says, hey, there are these insert keyword events occurring in this area. You've asked for this information. Here you go.
Yep.
Eventbrite does pretty much sort of the same thing. There's also some very key newsletters that I follow when I'll throw out their delicious brains. I love them. And they have so much information about WordPress and about hosting and about programming and coding and other things that go with it. And they will send out a newsletter that will occasionally say, here are the really cool events that are happening that can impact what you do in this particular world. And it included, you know, PHP events that were coming up. Like, that to me is the only other places, like, not just their newsletter, but other places that I follow, or companies that I follow will send a newsletter and be like, hey, this coming up in 2016, here are all the events you need to know. Except it's not 2016, but you know what I mean. I also Reddit.
Time travel, by the sounds of it.
Yes, but also Reddit.
Right.
Reddit. I never found events on Reddit.
I struggle to find anything relevant on Reddit.
Is there like a subreddit for it or something? Like, how do you even...
Reddit's just a polite internet to me. Reddit is the, I don't know how, but subreddits. I
don't know what subreddits you're on.
I know, but whenever I read it, I find that the discussions on Reddit are usually really quite productive in comparison to most other.
Political one, did you?
You should order by controversial, and then they're not that productive anymore.
Is there a controversial order category?
That's the only way
there
to
is.
Reddit. They're like the best comments. I mean,
but see, that's the
else?
thing. Like, for example, on Reddit, there's indie game dev and things like that. There is just subreddits for the very specific topics that you're fascinated in. Chris, there's one for guinea pigs. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm getting into succulents. This is my new obsession, which I'm starting up. So
very nice subreddit.
I love succulents. Oh my god, I'm gonna have some, like, I have 3 succulents coming away. 2 of them are already flowering. I'm dying. But anyway, so you find the topics that you're interested in, and even if you sit back and do nothing, you might see someone go, "Hey, I was just at this event for succulents, for Unity, for JavaScript, for whatever," and you stop and you go, "I didn't know that event existed. What is it? I got like nothing else to do. I'm sitting on the pot like you're supposed to when you look at Reddit." And you go through and you go, "Huh, that's something I'll just put into my little brain, and I know that it exists now."
I think being in the UK helps for that, because
yes,
there's not a lot of people that say, "Hey, I went to the Netherlands and went to this event."
Interestingly enough, at least for me, when I'm looking at places, people will say, like, for example, when we were first talking before we went live, Paul, I was like, are you going to that big event that they've got? I think it's for PHP, that's going to be taking place in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam in particular, if I remember correctly. And it's because I am aware of the fact that it's going on simply because of the different places I get my outlets. But holy cow, time!
Wait,
Yes.
already? Jesus, already?
Yes, it is now time for our RTFM, which is a section where we talk about things that have annoyed us, usually in the week, but it can be, for our guest, it can be anything that particularly annoys you. I actually don't have one this week. I can't think of anything. Oh, I've had a bad week, but it's not really an RTFM-y week. I can't really complain about it, if you know what I mean. Paul, as our guest, do you have anything that grinds your gears, that gets on your nerves?
Codecs, video codecs, audio codecs, everything related to that. I'm working with video conferencing software, and every time a new version of iOS comes out or whatever, then they updated the codecs ever so slightly. That, for example, today some iOS 10.2 on Chrome didn't work with Firefox on Android because somewhere an update went and they screwed up the codecs and they didn't work together anymore.
I'm not sure why. I'm not in that world, but I don't know what. We're just playing a video. It's just showing the same thing on the screen. It doesn't change what I'm seeing. Oh, Patrick.
I mean, there are always ways to optimize and compress things differently and do it slightly better, and maybe you're gonna gain because at least, I mean, Paul, maybe you know more, you definitely know more about the topic, but at least the one that I'm familiar with is that there is always a huge fight whenever there's like a new codec, like when H265 came out. Just before that, there was like huge fight about what is the most important thing. Is it the file size? Is it the quality? Is it the rendering time? And every single and there are multiple people who deal with video and and do video rendering, that each of them have completely different needs, and codec somehow has to do it all, which is impossible.
And then you also have patents on the codecs. So which codec is free and which is not, and so that's why H265 and H264 doesn't really work. So now they're all going to VP8 or hopefully very soon to AV1, and there's
AV1. Jeez, flippo! Wow. Like having done all of that stuff, I my heart breaks for you. I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. Like, I really am.
Well,
for me, it's like, oh, you need a video on your website? Well, you can either embed it from YouTube or create a tiny little WebM. We'll be fine.
That's all I care about, really.
Yeah, like that's all I have to worry about. And then, oh well, that just goes on. But yes,
I said let's just all do GIF. Let's just all do GIF.
Then you can decide between GIF or GIF
or APNG, which is basically better.
Animated PNG.
Yeah, good point. I mean, the GIF was extremely sarcastic because I love, as a graphical artist, I love GIFs. Like, there is no word in the language
I created a GIF today to send to a vendor because I was like, this is what my console, this particular console is spewing out at the moment. Here you go. Because I don't know, it was just the quickest way to do it, so I attached a GIF to an email.
But yes.
But yeah,
and I vote that we don't pronounce it GIF or GIF, but pronounce it in the Dutch way, which would be GIF.
That's the way I'm gonna pronounce it now. And also it's gonna be graphical interface.
Yes.
God, no. Okay, Patrick, do you have any RTFM?
I don't, because my life is amazing and beautiful and full of roses and petals.
Aww. I actually have one. This is a common thing. My RTFM is, if you're going to allow people to have access to their DNS records so that they can update their DNS records, can you please make certain that you explicitly specify if you're building an interface that is completely different than allowing them to have actual access to the records so that they can make the changes themselves, whether or not you accept 1024 or 2048 when it comes to key sizes for DeMarc settings and DeKim settings and things like that. Okay, thanks, please.
I have that exact problem when I'm trying to update the DNS records, and not just that. Whenever you add a slightly more obscure DNS record on my current DNS hosts, I don't host the website on there anymore. DNS control panel just disappears. It sticks. It's in the record. It's just disappeared, and you can't delete it. You can't edit it. You can't modify it. You can't add a new one and overwrite it. It's there, and you have to ring the hosts up and ask them to change it.
I would be so annoyed by that, because I'd be sitting there digging those records, trying to make certain that everything was present, because a simple screw up can turn your mail into spam on somebody's server or be blocked.
Specifically,
a simple screw up could end up with you with DNS poisoning, and like it's. This
is why I'm moving slowly all of my domains onto another provider, because it's just hideous.
Well, I highly recommend domains one place, DNS control another place.
Well, yes, that's what I'm doing.
That's my thinking, or my suggestion, but that's just me.
That's what I currently do. But anyway, yes, digress.
Anyway.
Yes. We are now at the end of our show. A very, very big thank you.
I do have an RTFM. I do have an RTFM.
Wow.
This week, I spent a lot of time in hospital, an NHS hospital, so because I'm in the UK. Now, if anybody has ever been frustrated by the NHS and basically communication problems, the reason for this, I've done quite a bit of work with people in the IT world in NHS as well, and the reason for this is because they've got lots of different systems that all do the same thing in slightly different ways, and the records aren't centralised in any way, shape or form. Now, we were my wife was admitted to hospital this week, and we had to fill in. No, we didn't fill in. Two different nurses filled in two different admittance forms, which are the exact same thing, but in two different departments. They filled in 3 forms for a particular scan that she needed doing, and they filled in 4 or 6 forms, all the same form, by the way, for another scan that she had to do. Now, this is a
was it at least digital, or was it actually on?
And then I saw, because I was petering around.
They inputted that later into PC, right?
And then the record was lost, and I don't know if they were lost. It's just that there's no communication between the departments. Now, even just within one department, this happened as well. There was 2 forms that were filled in 2 different places. And then, as you said, it then had to be entered into a computer later on, which I don't know if it's been done or not yet, because there's probably an administrative office that does that later on down the line. It's a process thing. Now, this is my RTFM that I'm not. Well, I think the NHS is absolutely wonderful, right? I think individually, everybody is brilliant. They all know exactly what they're doing, most of them anyway, and they're great at the job. And we don't get it for free, but we essentially are covered if there is an event that occurs. And they've all individually been brilliant. When my wife was on a ward, she was treated like a princess. She every whim was she doesn't have many whims because she doesn't request much of people, but it was brilliant.
M&Ms, damn it. Yeah, green M&Ms.
But it was a wonderful kind of treatment, but the actual processes that are in place, I do understand why it is, but please, for the love of God, can you just get somebody in like myself who's a consultant who can come in and can optimize, look and stand on the floor and watch what the nurses are doing and watch what the doctors are doing on a daily basis, and just get I don't know why they can't do this. They've got so much money as well. They don't have a deficit of money.
Fuck it, guys.
No.
Wait, no. Here is my Here is my official offer to British NHS. I will pay you 500 British pounds only so that I can get in there and put a torch to this fucking mess. Because what Chris described is like, it's so horrible, it's beautiful. It rolls back, and it's just, it's a wonder. It should be like your entire system of administration should be gathered together and put into museum for future generation, just like we do with our Holocaust monuments, as an example to future generation what to not fucking do.
So
Okay.
the other slight problem I have with it is the communication between people individually, but also between the patients and the staff. They don't give you an update as to where you're going to be next. They've already made the decision, and I know sometimes they can't tell you until a certain form's been filled in or certain procedures took place, but I had to chase people a number of times. We were in A&E for 11 hours the first day, and then we got sent home because I went in and I asked them to send us home because we were just sat there doing nothing for hours and hours and hours. And I wanted an appointment. They couldn't book an appointment because there was no process for it. And then when they eventually told us we had an appointment that could be booked, we came in at 9 o'clock the following morning to A&E and had to go through the entire process again. Entire triage process again, because they hadn't booked an appointment. They just said it to kind of appease us. We weren't complaining. We were just asking for an update. That's all it is. You know, I'm a very calm person. So,
well, see, this is interesting. I have a sister-in-law who works in the NHS. She's one of the administrators. Like, she knows how the processy things work and tries to make them better. I also know, and Gnome.mo, by the way, points out NHS employee here. It's manic, and not even kidding. Mm-hmm. I will state, no matter how bad it is improving.
Yes.
It is drastically improving. And some of the things that we might throw small hissy fits about may be done on purpose. Example, one of the things that I've had to do, because I've had my health issues while here, is I have gone over to a particular place where certain tests had to be used. You cannot use computers in the room where the test was being done because of the types of machines that were being used. Mm-hmm. So pencil and paper had to be done. You know, there are certain considerations that have to be made, but at the same time,
there is a solution to a lot of the problems.
They're working with ancient processes and things like that and trying to bring them up to date.
On that,
they really are.
I have insider information, and I won't obviously name any names or mention any names, that the NHS have more money than they know what to do with. However, most of that money is invested in legacy systems and legacy processes that are not fit for purpose in 2019. And the problem is they are so busy most of the time. I also have another story around that.
We are not going into an NHS bashing show.
No, I'm not bashing them. That's the thing is, I want to be very clear that I absolutely...
Can we?
No.
Sometime?
No. It is absolutely it's a wonderful system in the the wrong word for it. It's wonderful that we've got it. You know, we've got socialised healthcare, and we are covered in the event of a catastrophic family emergency, and it's brilliant that we've got. We don't have the same problems as a lot of other countries have, and we you know, it's wonderful to have that, and it's that peace of mind. But the processes desperately need investing in. Desperately, even if you just get someone to look at one hospital at a time, you know, or a company to go in, maybe not a company, maybe an individual to go in and look at what's going. I was stood in the middle of the A&E department while they ran off and did things based on my query, and I observed so many little processes that can be improved, so many cost savings that can be, ridiculous.
There is only one thing I will complain dead about when it comes to NHS. And then we're ending this.
Yes, sorry.
The fact that so many NHS offices, hospitals, etc., are in ancient buildings. Mm-hmm. So for you to go from one department to another, you end up walking down these tiny, very strange, narrow hallways, going half up and a floor here, going down a ramp here, because it's really old, archaic buildings. And there's a local NHS hospital here. Penderfields or something like that. It's gorgeous. And it works because it was designed for purpose. You walk in and you know where you need to go, and it's actually really easy to get around.
For the next 10 years until they cobble something else on the edge of it. And that's what my local hospital is. It's just one big corridor that's got loads of things. Anyway, yes. Let's have an NHS show.
It's a smorgasbord and a hodgepodge.
It's the real life spaghetti code.
Yes.
You know what? The NHS could deal with an event coordinator, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Go take it right back to events. So yes, we're now officially at the end of our show. A very big thanks to all of you who joined us live. And Vina, it was lovely to see you. And she definitely feels your salt, Patrick. Just so that you know. A big one to Awesome90, who we have renamed because we're not quite certain how to best say your name. Gnome.mo, lovely to see you as well. And I know there's others of you lurking. I see you, but it's lovely to have you here.
Indeed, yes. And come visit us. Come visit our website, www.dnistream.live. You can find links to our Discord, our Twitter, we don't have a Facebook, and we never will have a Facebook. And you can use the website to contact us for any reason. If you want to be a guest on the show, you want to suggest a topic, or even have a moan at us. If you've got a moan about the NHS, please contact us on...
If you have an idea how to improve NHS, contact us.
Yes, because we can so do something about it.
We could. We really could.
Not with that attitude we can't. And... speaking of attitudes, there are many.
You can do it.
I was thinking how to make the segue. Like I started the segue. The segue was working. The segue was going, and then it crashed. Anyhow, speaking of things that do not crash, being a dev podcast, we actually have source code for our website, which is not crashing, on github.com/documentation not included. So, for anyone interested, come along, check it out, contribute, bitch at Chris, or, stuff like that. Or even learn.net or Angular.
Can I make it look a little bit like my website?
You can, yes. Do a fork, and please. We forgot.
Here's what we should totally do, because for those of you who are just joining us or not aware of this, his personal website is absolutely killer, and he has to give the address out again.
He's going to. I'm just about to let him do that, Josie.
But I want him to do a reskin of our site so that we can randomly have it show up. Styled the way he thinks would be really cool. The marquee, maybe some trailing on the mouse. And I think it would be fantastic to have that just randomly appear on occasion. Not always. Well, see what happens.
I could do something.
Maybe you should also get a .tk version so that we can also just redirect them to that.
Ooh. Maybe I should also set up Gopher and get that stuff going as well. But anyway, sorry.
So, Paul, yes, thank you very much for being our guest. Thank you for being silent for most of the podcast and letting us talk over you.
I'm sorry for being silent, but I really enjoyed it.
You've been a wonderful guest. You've given us lots to talk about, lots of insight, and we really do hope to have you back again. If you'd like to pimp anything, your personal website is in fact, or anything else, your company or any projects that you're working on at the moment, please feel free.
Yes, of course. Well, my personal website is paulvm.com, as I should give you a little bit of an epilepsy warning. So there's that. I work at Confrere. We do video conferencing, mostly for doctors. If you're in Norway or somewhere in Scandinavia and you want your doctor to use it, just tell them, because that will be the best thing. And we're also looking.
Tepe, one of our listeners, is from Norway.
Oh, great! Well, that's just he should go to their doctor then, and just tell them to use Confrere, and so they can do just video consulting, which saves a lot of time. And we're also looking for developers. Okay. Just a little bit. So full stack developers. If you want to do JavaScript, just come to us. If you want to rant about codecs, just come to us.
And is it .NET backend stuff?
It is fully JavaScript, Node.js.
Oh, Node in the background there.
Yes.
Nice. Ooh, NPN.
Paul, yes. I gotta say, I am extremely annoyed at the fact that on your website, the text, the title moves horizontally opposed to the mouse and vertically with it. Like either one way or the other. Come on, don't mix it up.
There was actually a bug, and I just left it in.
There's a copy and pasted it.
It's a feature. It's a feature, right?
You copied and pasted it from dhtml.com. It's what we used to do back in the GeoCities day.
Yeah, and indeed, yes. That was a very nice website. But it's my website is loaded with new features like local storage, because it also has a like leave your message here, which just leaves it on your computer.
Yeah.
So.
and a counter that resets itself every time you come back on the website, I noticed.
Yeah, and if you refresh, it just adds up. So it's also local storage.
Yeah. So I mean, every time you clear your session, it starts.
Then
again.
it's gone again. Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful sight to behold.
Oh, well, thank absolutely all of you amazing individuals for joining us here at Documentation Not Included. We hope for those of you who are not able to join us this week, and those of you who did, that we'll see you next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time. I'm not going to be sitting there going GMT, British, or whatever, because screw it. I'm just going to say it's UK time. I've decided that. But hopefully we'll see you here on Twitch at twitch.tv/DNI stream. Notice! I won't be around for the next 2 weeks, my friends. I will be leaving you awesome people in the capable hands of Chris and Patrick.
Indeed.
I am doing this thing called holodeck.
Oh, me too. Next 2 weeks. Leaving in a week.
Oh, well, I am actually taking a vacation. A friend of mine is coming to visit for almost 2 weeks total, and I plan on getting stuck into some really cool stuff. Unfortunately, the axe throwing place isn't going to be open till May, so I'll get involved in that in May.
We do have a guest for next week as well. They have confirmed, and it's a guy from one of the LAN parties events that I attend or have attended in the past, and we will be talking about virtualization, specifically education or university education around virtualization, because he's doing a degree at the moment. So I'm quite looking forward to that.
That'll be interesting. I actually have gotten my degree by attending classes online, and I've also done it by going into physical location. So it's a shame that I won't be around.
Is it education about virtualization or virtualization of education?
It is education about the virtualization.
So it's about virtual machines and not about learning through internet.
That's right. Yes. As far as I understand, anyway, I've only had a very brief talk.
It could be recursive for all we know.
Yes, indeed.
Gnome.mo says it's me.
Yeah, it's Gnome. I wasn't sure if it was Gnome or not because I didn't know his Twitch handle, but yes,
it's me. But yes. Massive thank you to all of you guys. Hopefully we'll see you in Discord for updates about things. We're testing a new bot to help you see what's going to be discussed, etc. We miss you. Well, at least I'll miss you guys. But massive thank you to Chris, Patrick, Paul, and myself, Josie, from Documentation Included. Bye-bye. That took way too long.
Bye.
Bye.